Good morning. It's good to see all of you online today. My name is Michael Kyer, and I use he, him pronouns. I'm with the OUUC tech team. Welcome to all who are joining us on whatever platform you are using. This Zoom service is being recorded, and it is streaming live to YouTube. We use the Zoom chat feature for greetings, song lyrics, affirmations, and applause, and items shared from the heart. The chat is not posted or shared publicly. If you experience any technical issues during the service, you can reach out to Jocelyn or any other member of the tech team for assistance when the chat is on. Last, I hope you'll find a candle or chalice. In a moment, we can light them together. Thank you for your grace. As we all remember, it's about connection, not perfection.
Good morning. Let's sing together hymn number 1018 out of the Till Hymn book, Come and Go With Me, or you can find the lyrics posted in the chat. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound, oh, where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. There will be freedom in that land. There will be freedom in that land. There will be freedom in that land where I'm bound, oh, where I'm bound. There will be freedom in that land. There will be freedom in that land. There will be freedom in that land where I'm bound. And there will be justice in that land. There will be justice in that land. There will be justice in that land where I'm bound, oh, where I'm bound. There will be justice in that land. There will be justice in that land. There will be justice in that land where I'm bound. And there will be singing in that land. There will be singing in that land. There will be singing in that land where I'm bound, oh, where I'm bound. There will be singing in that land. There will be singing in that land. There will be singing in that land where I'm bound. Thank you for singing.
Good morning. Welcome to the Olympia Unitarian Universalist Congregation Worship Service. We welcome each of you to this celebration of love and to this congregation. The OUUC community comes together in the mutual promises and possibilities of our covenant. We envision a world that is loving, just, and healthy. We commit to live out our mission to welcome and wonder, embrace and empower, bridge and become. We are so glad that you are here. I'm the Reverend Mary Geer, OUUC's minister, and I use she, her pronouns. Leading worship with me today is Sarah Lewis, the Director of Community and Faith Development, and Troy Fisher, our music director. Our planned celebrant today, Emmy Allen, needed to be elsewhere this morning, and so we send our love with them. We are grateful for the many hands that helped make worship happen this morning. Thank you to the breakout room hosts, the tech team members, and all who contribute in so many ways. After the service, you will have a chance to discuss reflection questions that have been offered by Sarah. We'll invite you to go into a breakout room for a virtual coffee chat. This is a chance to gather with a small group to say hello and check in. Each breakout room will have a host to make sure that everyone knows each other and has a chance to share. We hope you'll join the discussion.
After the coffee chat today, return to the main room for a question and answer about consent culture with members of our high school youth group. They will be answering your questions about how we can take the lessons of consent culture into our lives together during a pandemic. Next Saturday, the 22nd at 1 p.m., everyone who is interested in helping with greeting and ushering as we return to in-person worship attendance are invited to a greeter training on Zoom. Look in the weekly update or email me, Sarah Lewis, for a Zoom link. All are welcome. There are many opportunities to stay connected to our community. Please check the website regularly. If you have questions or need help, please check in with a staff member. Now, let us open our hearts and minds as we prepare for worship. Welcome, everyone. It is good to be together.
This morning, at a time of so much loss, we take just a moment now to mourn the death of two people beloved to the OUUC community, Evelyn Greenberg and Arlene Anderson. Evie Greenberg died on the evening of Tuesday, January 11th, just a few days shy of her 85th birthday. She died at home, attended by her adopted granddaughter and caregiver, Haley Hall. Evie faced death the way she faced illness, with determination and fortitude. Evie leaves behind 4 nieces and a nephew, 4 great nieces and nephews, and 4 great-great nieces and nephews. Evie was born in Brooklyn, New York on January 14, 1937. She graduated from Erasmus Hall High School in the Flatbush neighborhood in Brooklyn. And Evie is a notable alumni of Brooklyn College, along with Bernie Sanders, Shirley Chisholm, and others. Evie's early work life was varied, and I'm told included working as a cab driver in Brooklyn. She was devoted to books and a great advocate of reading. She shared her devotion and passion throughout her career as a college librarian. She served at Cornell University and others, serving the longest at Rutgers University. Evie married her beloved Ruth Weber at OUUC in a beautiful and joyous celebration that is talked about to this day. They enjoyed travel and adventures together until Ruth's death on Evie's birthday just 5 years ago. I'm told Evie's home is full of photos and mementos from their travels, and they would have celebrated their anniversary on February 9th. Evie joined OUUC in 1997 and served the congregation in so many ways over the years. She served on the board and numerous committees. She put her faith in action as a passionate advocate of LGBTQ rights. She and Ruth purchased every social event in the annual auction and joined in with gusto. Evie was generous with her time, talent, and her treasure. She loved this congregation and her faith tradition. Evie is remembered as taking her responsibilities as a member of OUUC very seriously, asking hard questions in congregational meetings in her bold and outspoken manner. And she loved people. She lived in relationship with others, loving friends and all those she met with her tender heart. I met Evie during my candidating week in April of 2019. After a Get to Know the Potential Minister forum at Panorama, Evie came up to me, planted her feet, looked me in the eye, and said, "I'm not sure you're tough enough to serve this congregation." We had a lively conversation after that, and I am grateful to have had many of those with Evie. Evie's ashes will be interred in the OUUC columbarium to join Ruth's. There is no firm plan yet to celebrate her life, a life that is to be celebrated. We will keep you informed. Evie leaves a legacy of commitment, passion, and love, a legacy that we will cherish and will carry on. We will miss her. We light a candle in memory of Evelyn Greenberg. Arlene Anderson died on the night of Thursday, January 13th, at the age of 94. She was surrounded by her loving family and well cared for by hospice. I was grateful to have been with Arlene and her family in her last hours. Arlene was almost a lifelong Unitarian. Her family helped form the Blaine UU congregation when she was a child, and she was devoted to this faith tradition. She told me that she had two churches, OUUC and the Blaine UU Church where she was raised. She helped start UU fellowships or groups in college and throughout her life, including All Souls Fellowship here in Olympia, which recently disbanded. Arlene was born on a dairy farm in Blaine, Washington on October 10th, 1927, the oldest in a family of 6 children, a family with strong Icelandic and Swedish heritage. Arlene loved the farm and enjoyed camping and clam digging with her family. Arlene graduated from Blaine High School in 1945 and from Washington State College, which became WSU. She graduated in 1949 with a Bachelor of Science degree, and this began a long career in education, ending in 1988 after 15 years teaching home economics at Nisqually Middle School in Lacey. Arlene was an avid Mariners fan and a lifelong member of the Sons of Norway. She loved doing crossword puzzles, playing cribbage, and making preserves and desserts. She was also involved in politics, working to get Democrats elected, and a believer in good government, serving as a Capitol tour guide in her retirement. Arlene was widowed twice, returning to her maiden name later in life. She was married to Vern Hagen for 22 years, and they raised 5 children together. Arlene leaves behind her children, 10 grandchildren, and 20 great-grandchildren. Members at OUUC describe Arlene as a person who got things done. Even as she belonged to All Souls, she remained connected to OUUC, taking classes and preserving beloved friendships. When I spoke to Arlene about her beliefs at the end of her life, she said she was not afraid of death, understanding that it is a mystery. And when I noted that I found people tend to face death the way they face life, she nodded and she said, "Straight on." The family plans to celebrate Arlene's life in a service this spring, and as with Evie's celebration of life, we will keep you informed through the Tuesday electronic newsletter and announcements. Arlene left a legacy of service, engagement, and care. She will be missed. We light a candle in memory of Arlene Anderson.
This morning and every Sunday morning, we join Unitarian Universalist congregations around the world in lighting a chalice, the symbol of our faith tradition. Please join me as we light our chalices together with these words by Molly Brewer. My beloved people, I cannot pretend, and so I will not tell you that everything is okay right now, that there is no reason to be angry, that you must be optimistic or at peace. I cannot pretend these things, and so I won't tell them to you.
But now our chalice is lit. And so all I ask in this moment is that we remember the words of Rebecca Parker. There is a love. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all. By the light of our chalice, let us rest in that love.
Our opening words are offered by Byron Tyler Coles and are titled In Honor and Praise to Black Rage. Deep in the shadow of night, down near the crossroads and cemetery gates, with bitter liquor and cigar smoke wafting, I greet you. Clad in white upon the floor before shrines, following the names of the ancestors being uttered, I greet you. You are the sacred and righteous rage of my people, echoing throughout time from the lands of our elders, from depths of the oceans. I hear you now. You call out to us in the swirling winds and the clamoring of lightning and the crashing of waves and the flow of rivers and the rustling of forests, in clouds that move across the heavens, in the drum beat of the earth. You are present in the cries of Black Lives Matter and no justice, no peace. You shimmer brightly in the flames of buildings crumbling to the ground as they are consumed in flame, in the calls for protests and direct action, in the stirring of pots, the laughter of children, in the tears and prayers of guardians. You are Black rage, holy and sacred, unbound and unapologetic. You swell in the hips and breasts, in the curves of cheekbones and nostrils, the beats of hearts and pulsating thoughts, in exhaustion, in frustration, in numbness, in mobilization, in life. And you name yourself as good. Holy and sacred Black rage, be ever present in our struggle for liberation, in our work to be, to love, to exist. Guide our movements in all their forms as we strive to be good ancestors, ensuring that our descendants might look upon our memory with favor. For you, for them, invite us to live without fear. Dear holy and sacred Black rage, give life to this valley of dry bones, move like fire upon our spirits, stir within us now and forevermore. Come, let us worship together.
Let's sing together Holly Near's song, We Are a Gentle, Angry People. It's hymn number 170 in the gray hymnal, or you can find the lyrics posted in the chat. Holly recently changed the 5th verse to these words, we are all in this together. So I'll remind you when we get there. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing for our lives. Yes, we are a land of many colors, and we are singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing for our lives. We are all in this together. We are all in this together, and we are singing for our lives. We are all in this together, and we are singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing for our lives.
Our story today is The Lazy Bear by Brian Wildsmith. Once upon a time, there was a bear who had many friends. And one day, the bear was out walking around their home, and they happened upon a wagon. Now, the bear had never seen a wagon before and was very curious. So they sniffed all around the wagon, they checked it out, and then they climbed inside it. And much to their surprise, the wagon began to roll downhill. And it got faster and faster. And the bear was frightened at first, but then, oh my goodness, rolling down the hill was exhilarating and so much fun. And so when the bear came to the bottom of the hill, having had so much fun doing it, the bear pushed the wagon back up the hill and did it again. And again, the bear pushed the wagon up the hill and rode down. It was so much fun. But after many, many times doing this, although riding down the hill never got old, pushing the wagon back up the hill started to be rather tiring and bothersome. And so the bear had an idea. They would go and find their friends. First, they found Raccoon. "Oh, you must come and see what I have found," Bear told Raccoon. And Raccoon was very curious, so they followed along. Then they found Deer, who was also very curious to be told about this amazing thing, and joined in. And finally, they found Goat, who also loved the idea of this new thing to discover. And so Bear brought all their friends to the top of the hill, and they all climbed in the wagon together. And they rolled down the hill. Whee! It was so much fun. When they got to the bottom, the other animals said, "That was great. Let's do it again." And Bear said, "Yeah, all of you hop out and push me back up the hill and we'll do it again." "What?" the friends said. "You're not going to get out and help push?" "No," said Bear. "It's my wagon, and so I'm going to stay in it." The other animals weren't really sure about this, but they did it. They pushed Bear and the wagon back up the hill all together. They did this over and over again. And, pushing the wagon up the hill was hard and tiring, but pushing the wagon up the hill with a heavy bear in it was even worse. But whenever they complained or asked Bear to get out, Bear looked so fierce. Really, they've never seen Bear act like this before. And so they were afraid to say anything. Finally, though, it got to be too much. They were feeling really fed up with this. And so as they were pushing the wagon back up the hill, Goat whispered, "I have an idea." And the other animals leaned in to listen, and they all agreed that yes, this is what they would do. And so when they got to the very top of the hill, they gave a mighty push and they said, "Over the top they go!" And they pushed Bear off the other side of the hill, which was much steeper. And Bear went hurtling down quickly and came to the bottom and went flying out of the wagon, landing in a small pond. The wagon was upturned in the mud. Bear was hugely surprised and shocked by this. And looking around, Bear saw their friends standing there disapprovingly. "It serves you right," they said. "You were not being fair. You made us push you and the wagon up the hill when you could have gotten out and helped." Nonetheless, even though they were angry with Bear, they helped get the wagon out of the mud, they set it up right, and they invited Bear to help push it back up to the top of the hill, which Bear did. And then they said, "We can all keep riding down the hill and all keep pushing it back up." And so they did, and Bear came to see that, in fact, this was a better plan after all. Thus ends our story.
We came together in community this morning, bringing with us all that is in our lives. In this space, we draw on the strength of our community to help us carry all that we bring here with us. In this space, we share from our hearts what brings us joy and sorrow, what brings us worry and delight, what makes us afraid, and what makes us dance. Let's open our hearts to the complexity of life, our own and others. You will hear a drumbeat as we share today. It brings into our awareness that our individual hearts beat, and together we create the heartbeat of our community. It's been a hard week, and there is much to share. I invite you to take a breath, just take a breath, and remember to breathe. Let's open our hearts to all that is in our lives and community today. We send our love and care to the family and friends of Evelyn Greenberg as we mourn her passing. She was loved by many and is so missed, especially in this community. We send our love and care to the family and friends of Arlene Anderson as we remember her contributions to OUUC and Unitarian Universalism. We honor her legacy. Bernie Brady and Joan Forrest share that Joan was diagnosed with ALS about 4 weeks ago. She is receiving care through hospice as they focus on keeping her comfortable at home. Joan would appreciate cards that express love and appreciation, not get well cards, as she is clear about her prognosis. You can find their address in OUUC Connect or contact the congregation office. Robin Thompson shares that her daughter-in-law, Carolyn, who Robin names the angel that married my son, is getting ready to enter dialysis and is now on the waiting list for a kidney transplant. Robin asks that we offer prayers and positive energy as she joins Carolyn and Bryson on this journey. Robin, we are holding you all in love and light. And last, Gail James is delighted to share that former OUUC member Adele Donahue has returned to Olympia and is living in Gail's apartment complex. Gail used her best detective skills to track Adele down and reports that they are now good friends. Welcome back, Adele. May your friendship continue to bloom. Just take a moment to breathe again. I know you're getting ready to share in the chat. You can just take a moment to pause and take it in. We'll wait. And just breathe. And when you're ready, I invite you to share from your heart by entering in the chat. This is a time to share all that you wish, joys and sorrows and whatever else is shared from your heart. And as we take in what is posted, let us hear the heartbeat of our community and reach out our hearts in love and care to all those who share. I'll place a stone in the water for all that has been shared and will be shared from the heart, a stone holding the complexity of our lives, held in the water of community. And one more stone placed in the water for all that we hold in our hearts and that remains unspoken. I invite you now into a time of reflection, prayer, and meditation. infinite web of life, spirit of love, great mystery from which we come and to which we return. Our hearts and lives are full this morning. We remember with fondness and love those we have lost, not only Evie and Arlene, but many others. May we honor their memory with the lessons that they left us. There is much in our lives right now. We pray for the fortitude and love that Evie taught us through living her amazing life. There is much in our world right now. We pray for the courage and commitment that Arlene taught us through her life of service. There is much in this life and in this world. May we be grateful for the beauty of our earth. May we be thankful for the love that holds us all. And may we be grateful for life itself. So may this be, blessed be, and amen. Let's hold a moment of silence together.
Let's sing together hymn number 1040, Hush. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Oh, hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? Let's sing about justice. Hush, it sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. It sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Oh, it sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do?
Our prayers and meditations deepen our gratitude for what we know as sacred in our lives and in this world. Each Sunday, we express our gratitude by joining together in service to our community and to something greater than ourselves. The offering collected here does two things. It supports the ongoing work of OUUC, which is also supported by your regular pledges. And the offering also supports an organization that serves our community in harmony with our Unitarian Universalist values. Your generous gifts from November and December Share the Plate collection allowed us to send $2,706 to the Mayday Foundation. Your generous Christmas Eve offerings added $1,149 to the Minister's Benevolence Fund. Thank you.
For January and February, our Share the Plate recipient is Thurston Climate Action Team. TCAT is a local nonprofit dedicated to bringing our community together to reduce climate disruption, resulting in a healthy, just, and prosperous future for all. Founded in 2009, they focus on initiatives that quickly, significantly, and equitably reduce greenhouse gas emissions in Thurston County. Please note that you can participate in the offering by making a donation online through the church website or texting the number on the screen. You can also mail a check to OUUC. Unitarian Universalism is a grand vision of a world filled with peace and justice, love and joy. Each one of you, by your commitment of time, energy, and resources, helps make that grand vision real. May the offering now be generously given as it is gratefully received.
Thank you for your generous gifts. Our first reading today is from the book This One Wild and Precious Life by Sarah Wilson. Have you heard of Kali, the Hindu goddess of rage? To cut a long and fun mythological story to a paragraph, once upon a time, the god Shiva was being a lazy, flaccid bloke, spending all his time meditating and failing to protect the earth. So the other deities sent him the goddess Shakti, who takes the form of Kali, goddess of rage, when required, to coax him into waking the bleep up. Anyway, a bunch of things happened where some other deity dudes do the wrong thing by Shakti and put power in the way of good, which maddens Shakti. And then Shiva tells her unhelpfully to calm down, and then basically forbids her from speaking up. At which point, Shakti transforms into Kali, a formidable monster thing with fangs and a necklace of severed male heads. And she rages. Shiva gets the point quite quickly, lifts his game, and re-acknowledges the importance of the feminine. Most myths stand the test of time in metaphor form. I find comfort in the universal truths they spell out, and in this case, the most bodacious acknowledgement that rage is often entirely appropriate and purposeful.
Our second reading is titled The Flawed Understanding of Martin Luther King Jr. by Aisha Ansano. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a radical. He was called the most dangerous man in America by the FBI and had a 17,000-page FBI file at the time of his death. It wasn't just KKK members or those in positions of power who disagreed with him or hated him. As Cornel West explains in his book, The Radical King, by the time of King's death, Most of the country didn't like him. Quote, there was intense FBI pressure, including attempts to make him commit suicide, West reminds us. The Black civil rights leadership was trashing him. The white establishment had rejected him. The young Black revolutionaries were dismissing him. End quote. Over the course of his life, King was not a man who was loved by most. In fact, he was hated by a select few. He was an incredibly maligned man by the time he died, and yet we never talk about that. Instead, we praise and honor him and hold him up as the highest standard of the struggle for justice. We as a society measure all who struggle for justice against Dr. King, but not against who he actually was. We measure those who struggle for justice against who we have decided Dr. King was, a sanitized version of the actual man. As a society, we tell activists that their protests are too unruly, their demands too harsh, their voices too strident, their methods too stringent. We have decided as a society that there is one way to struggle for justice, and it's the way we like to imagine King struggled for justice, even though that's not the way he actually did it. In the summer of 2016, protesters took to the streets around the country, condemning police brutality and proclaiming that Black lives matter. And as has happened over and over again with these sorts of protests, many people criticized their methods and tactics. In a press conference, Atlanta Mayor Kasim Reed stated, "Dr. King would never take a freeway." Anyone remember the powerful thing King organized? The marches from Selma to Montgomery? The ones that entailed several hundred people walking down a highway and crossing a bridge, blocking cars from being able to drive on it? The flawed understanding of King is everywhere, and it has seeped into our society's understanding of what is acceptable or appropriate in the struggle for racial justice. This ends our readings.
Last November, when Kyle Rittenhouse was found not guilty of charges related to his shooting and killing of two unarmed protesters, I found myself just incredibly angry. In fact, I was so angry that I needed to just blast some good anger music at max volume and scream and shout for a little bit. My choice of music was Rage Against the Machine's song Killing in the Name Of, so you can just picture me headbanging to that song for your mental image of how this worked. I get angry sometimes, very angry. I feel anger about the racism, sexism, ableism, homophobia, transphobia, economic exploitation, destruction of nature and our shared environment and future, war, violence, neglect of those in need, and general lack of compassion in the world, to name a few. Really, I wonder how I could possibly not be angry about all of that. Angry and heartbroken. I am angry and heartbroken because I care and feel, and so yes, heartbroken, and yes, very, very angry. Now, some of you are probably nodding along and saying, yes, me too. And others may be feeling uncomfortable because anger is a bad emotion that we shouldn't feel. It depends on your socialization just how much you might feel allowed to feel angry. Although these are just generalizations, typically men are socialized to be allowed to be more angry than women, and there are also class, race, and generational differences in how much we may feel that we are allowed to be angry and in how others will perceive and react to our anger. And then there is our religious and spiritual grounding and how we perceive anger fits into that framework. Are religious and spiritual people allowed to feel anger? Aren't we seeking inner and outer peace? Aren't we supposed to turn the other cheek? Aren't we all about love? Yes, many spiritual teachings point us toward non-attachment and inner contentment and equanimity. But we also have the examples of the Jewish and Christian traditions with the Hebrew prophets bravely and angrily preaching against the injustices of their times, and the example of Jesus flipping over the tables in the temple in his anger. They had righteous anger as a response to injustice and other wrongs of the world. And another religious and social justice model for us is Martin Luther King Jr., who developed and taught a theology and philosophy of nonviolent resistance to injustice. As we heard in our second reading today, MLK's legacy is sometimes invoked as a rebuke for those who express anger, respond to injustices, or engage in protest in ways that are unlawful or uncivil. There is a sanitized version of Dr. King that is taught as some sort of ideal of a justice seeker who was always peaceful, with a version of peaceful that goes beyond nonviolence and calls for something closer to comfortable and non-challenging. This is not who the real Dr. King was or how he operated in his work for social justice, how he understood the theological and philosophical grounding of that work, or how people reacted to him in his own time. All of this came after, as the social myth of MLK was created, much like it has also now been created around Nelson Mandela. In his book, The Radical King, Cornel West writes, quote, "King and Mandela are the two towering public figures in the past 50 years in the world, and both have been Santa Clausified, tamed, domesticated, sanitized, and sterilized into non-threatening and smiling old men with toys in their bags and forgiveness in their hearts. Yet both were radical and revolutionary. They were hunted, hated, and hurt by the powers that be, and both had radical love," end quote. Radical love. For me, that phrase means a big love. What Dr. King used the Greek word agape to describe. Love for everyone, for the larger community, for the wider world. And a radical love cannot be neutral when faced with injustice. Radical love calls for shaking the whole thing up if we have to, in order to create justice and liberation for all. Dr. King frequently called for that sort of radical, reshape it from the ground up change to our society and the world. He also called for an active resistance to the lull of the status quo and conformity that may keep us from seeking change. It's not hard for me to imagine that Dr. King would have approved of the protest started by football player Colin Kaepernick, who began kneeling for the national anthem before games. This was a peaceful and respectful act of protest. But it's telling that for many people, Even this peaceful and non-disruptive protest was seen as unacceptable and disrespectful. The racial justice protests and uprisings of the last few years were also seen as unacceptably destructive or angry by many more people. We often get so busy debating whether the protest is done right that we don't get to debating the injustices that provoked the protest. This way that tone policing and calling for civility has been used to maintain the status quo and our hierarchies of power, including white supremacy culture, is explored in the book Against Civility: The Hidden Racism in Our Obsession with Civility by Alex Zamelin. The author writes, quote, "Civility is a central term through which racial inequality has been maintained. Civility is exalted in the language of slaveholders, segregationists, lynch mobs, and eugenicists. And surprisingly, it is elevated in the language of well-intentioned liberals, self-described moderates, and devout progressives. All of them traffic in ideas about public etiquette to declare what counts as good citizenship and what doesn't. From slavery to Jim Crow, to Black ghettoization, to mass incarceration, to police brutality, the idea of civility has been enlisted to treat Black suffering with apathy or to maintain the status quo. Worse, it has been a tool for silencing dissent, repressing political participation, enforcing economic inequality, and justifying violence upon people of color," end quote. History is full of times that we can look back on now and say that the agitators and the dissidents were right, and the polite and civil people were in the wrong. And yet, we continue to hear the siren cry of civility. Now, let me be clear. When I critique civility, I am not critiquing the idea that we should treat all people with compassion and respect. People continue to have inherent worth and dignity, but not all their ideas or actions do. And being challenged or made uncomfortable is not the same as being treated badly. Last week, as we revisited the January 6th insurrection at its one-year anniversary, I heard many people on news programs calling for a return to civility and for more dialogue and trying to see the viewpoints of the other. The problem I see with that call to peace is that it could be a false peace, for there can be no real peace without justice. We can have a very civil society where no one ever acts out, and yet many are still oppressed and even crushed under systems. The call of love is not to be polite and well-behaved. It is to create a world where all are free and treated with inherent worth and dignity. And so, while the violence of the January 6th insurrection was absolutely wrong, I disagree that we need to meet it with greater civility and understanding. I can't meet a Nazi halfway. And while I can respect and even love the inherent worth and humanity of all people, I refuse to become tolerant of intolerance. Sometimes this focus on civility is a deliberate and cynical choice to manipulate the debate and put those calling for justice on the defensive, having to justify themselves rather than be able to affect the changes they are calling for. Other times, I believe many of us do this without thinking, because the status quo and civility are more comfortable and feel safer than the challenges being brought. The people bringing the challenge, the protesters in our midst, become the perceived problem. Last year, the comedian host of The Daily Show, Trevor Noah, put it this way, quote, "I think sometimes in society, people get more focused on the symptoms than the cause. I think the real question we should be asking is, why does there need to be a protest in the first place?" End quote. But the thing is, Many of us, often because of our own privilege, don't become aware of the problem until we are confronted by the symptom. The protests, the unhappy and angry people. And so we do focus on the symptoms. This applies to our squeaky wheels who speak up in a meeting or at the family dinner table, just as much as it does to how we react to a protest on the street. We need to hear each other and get down to causes. We need to listen to everyone from all viewpoints. Rather than enforcing rules of civility and comfort, we need to be seeking to bring about greater justice, liberation, equity, and love for all beings and for our collective interdependent planet. Even with the case of the January 6th insurrectionists, we should look to the causes. And where the cause is a need for greater understanding, compassion, education, opportunity, justice, etc., we should all work to address the cause. But not all causes are the same. I cannot affirm xenophobia, racism, or the fear of losing white privilege as being morally equal to the desire for freedom and equity. I won't hate the people, but their causes, ideas, and actions make me angry. I think that is the difference between a healthy and a destructive anger. Destructive anger against other people is basically hate, something which requires that we make them into the other and somehow forget our shared humanity and interrelatedness. But anger, at times, is a healthy feeling that tells us that something that has happened is not right. Anger at events, ideas, and actions is different from hating or dehumanizing other people. Dr. King spent a great deal of ink and words on the subject of bitterness and hatred. He counseled Black people not to hate white racists, not because the white racists had a valid cause they were fighting for, but because hating and bitterness bring down the people who hate and feel bitter more than they do the subjects of their feelings, and can lead to a cycle of never-ending personal attacks rather than to systemic change. Interestingly to me, in what I have read, Dr. King didn't really talk about anger at all. He used other words that I would equate with anger. Dissatisfaction, for instance. While that word can sound so tame, just imagine it shouted with passion. We should be most dissatisfied with anything less than justice for all. And he understood and sympathized with the anger of oppressed people who longed to throw off the yoke of their oppression. Reading between the lines, I believe that Dr. King understood the fire of anger that some of us feel in our own bellies. Dr. King's nonviolent methods were not comfortable and not always civil by everyone's definition of that word. While he asked people to practice strict nonviolence, even refraining from yelling or calling names, he also blocked traffic, went where he wasn't wanted, refused to be quiet or patient, and disrupted business as usual in whatever nonviolent ways possible. And as the push for liberation and equity for African Americans moved away from nonviolence and cities across America experienced riots, Dr. King wrestled with what was the effective path forward, but never called for a retreat into acquiescence with the way that things were. In 1968, in a speech to the local 1199 union in New York City, Dr. King said, quote, "The problem with a riot is that it can always be halted by superior force, so I couldn't advise that. On the other hand, I couldn't advise following a path of Martin Luther King just sitting around signing statements and writing articles condemning the rioters, or engaging in a process of timid supplications for justice. The fact is that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. End quote. We need our squeaky wheels and our protesters because freedom must be demanded. We cannot just be nice, polite people and tolerate bad behaviors and systemic injustices. When we witness or experience a microaggression, we may need to confront the person who committed it, even if that is not comfortable, and even if that is perceived as impolite. When we stand witness to the larger systemic wrongs in our world, we have to organize to try to change them, and we have to show up and show our opposition to them. And our anger may be what moves us to those actions. It's fine to feel angry when microaggressions are being committed in your community. It's fine to be angry when you are not respected in your full humanity or you are oppressed. It's fine to be angry when you see exploitation and abuse and power hoarding. The anger is the signal that something is wrong. Listen to it. But then what do you do with that anger? Maybe you might need to just rage non-violently and non-destructively. Maybe, like me, you just need some really loud music and you might need to scream or smash up some Play-Doh or clay or punch your pillow or go for a run or any of the other non-harmful options you can think of to move some of that emotion and energy through your body and release it a bit. You can also channel it and let it fuel your actions. Again, channel it in ways that are non-destructive to you and others, but channel it. In our story today, if the other animals hadn't ever gotten adequately fed up with the bear would have kept on being unfair to them. They had to claim their truth, their dissatisfaction, their anger, and recognize their power to make change. We also have to be fed up with how things have been. We need to be fed up with economic exploitation and inequality. We need to be fed up with corruption and the decaying of our democracy. We need to be fed up with all of the isms of oppression and inequity that come from the hierarchies of valuing some humans and some ways of being human over others. We need to be fed up with violence, intimidation, and abuse. We need to be fed up with the destruction of nature and our planet for the profit of a few. We need to be fed up with anything less than the beloved community sharing and caring for this one wild and precious planet we all call home. And we need to do something about it. Sure, we cannot wave a magic wand and make things change, but showing up and shouting and waving signs is still better than just shrugging and sitting back. We have different levels of privilege in this society and different resources and abilities, but we all have some power, some way to show up for what is right. And if you recognize that you carry privilege and have resources, figure out how to use those to make things better for us all. Figure out where and how you can show up and make yourself heard. It may be within your family or in a work or community meeting. It may be on the streets, it may be on social media, it may be here within the congregation. Do it all, whatever is within your power. Claim the power that you have, claim the anger that you hold, and use them. They are not taboo, bad, or negative in themselves. Channel them with love. As Dr. King told the 1967 annual convention of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, quote, "One of the great problems of history is that the concepts of love and power have usually been contrasted as opposites, polar opposites, so that love is identified with a resignation of power and power with a denial of love. Now we got to get this thing right. What is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, and that love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice and justice at its best is love correcting everything that stands against love. End quote. Think about that. Power. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is love correcting everything that stands against love. What are the demands of justice now, and how do we implement them? What is standing against love right now, and how do we correct it? May we be a people who claim both our power and our love, acknowledging our anger in healthy ways and working always to bring about justice and love in this world. May we strive always to answer the call, even though change may seem far off. I'll close with the words of Dr. King, again from his 1967 speech to the SCLC. Quote, "Let this affirmation be our ringing cry. It will give us the courage to face the uncertainties of the future. It will give our tired feet new strength as we continue our forward stride toward the city of freedom. When our days become dreary with low hovering clouds of despair, and when our nights become darker than 1,000 midnights, let us remember that there is a creative force in this universe working to pull down the gigantic mountain of evil, a power that is able to make a way out of no way and transform dark yesterdays into bright tomorrows. Let us realize that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Let us realize that William Cullen Bryant is right, that truth crushed to earth will rise again. Let us go out realizing that the Bible is right. Be not deceived, God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. This is our hope for the future. And with this faith, we will be able to sing in some not too distant tomorrow with a cosmic past tense. We have overcome. We have overcome. Deep in my heart, I did believe that we would overcome."
Let's join in singing together hymn number 1030. We are marching. We are marching in the light of love. 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 We are marching, marching, oh, we are marching in the light of love. We are marching, oh, we are marching in the light of love. We are singing 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 in the light of love. We are singing, singing, oh, we are singing in the light of love. We are singing, oh, we are singing in the light of love.
We extinguish our chalices today, again with these words by Martin Luther King Jr. This is our hope for the future. And with this faith, we will be able to sing in some not too distant tomorrow with a cosmic past tense. We have overcome. We have overcome. Deep in my heart, I did believe we would overcome. With that legacy left to all of us, may we carry on in the struggle and the power. Blessed be.
Let's join together in singing our unison benediction. are part of the web of love. May our words, may our deeds pull the strands of the infinite web toward health, toward justice,